On today's show, Amen Thompson's next steps forward with the Houston Rockets. What does he need to show us next? And could he possibly become a starter before the end of the season? It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That's the number one way that you can help our show out, is to comment anything below the video. Just do a drive-by and say, Go Rockets. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, NBA draft enthusiast, and diehard Houston Rockets fan, Madison Moore. You can track down on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. And here on today's show, we're going to be taking a look at Amen Thompson, kind of what he proved during his rookie season, what we learned about him as a player, some of his strengths, his weaknesses, and what he needs to show us next, what he can improve upon going into his sophomore campaign. We got a lot of different angles that we're going to tackle on today's show, Madison. And so kind of to start things off here, we've got to revisit a little bit, look back and reflect on Amen Thompson's rookie campaign, which I think, across the board, I think it started off a little rough, right? He looked, I won't say fish out of water, but maybe a little unprepared for the role that the Rockets initially had him in as the backup point guard. Wasn't quite ready to be a lead ball handler or a primary ball handler at the NBA level. And then almost, thankfully, silver lining, all that stuff, he had the early injury, missed some time. And then when he came back into the Rockets rotation, they decided they were going to run him in a different sense. And they basically started using him as that pseudo wing, that kind of Swiss Army knife role. And it worked a lot better and catered to his strengths a lot more to play in that role. And that's where we really saw him kind of hit the ground running and start to excel during his rookie season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a credit to the versatility that Amen really provided on the floor, and also a credit to Ime Udoka, really understanding where Amen was as a player, where he was at in the immediate, as he was going through the season, and kind of pivoting to a way where he could still help the team get reps and really become a factor in this Rockets team. And I think he really flourished in that role. Like, he really flourished in that wing role. And it speaks to not just Amen's, athleticism, versatility, but also his IQ, his ability to adapt on the fly and really make a difference in a impact towards winning, and which I think was the biggest success for such a young player, is that he can come in and play a role immediately that contributes to wins on the floor.
And not only that, right? So he was adaptable. He got into the new role. And then we also saw as the season progressed and he kind of became, I think it didn't take long, I don't think, for Amen to really grow and become what I think was easily the Rockets' best perimeter defender. Like, he far surpassed, Dillon Brooks was supposed to be the Rockets' defensive ace. That's what they brought him in to be, give him some edge, all that. And he still was that to a degree. But I think there became a point where it was like, oh, this is what Amen can bring to the table defensively. And he just lapped Dillon Brooks basically in that regard, to where when it came time to, lock down a certain guy or if you needed to get a certain stop, then Amen could be that guy for you. And then obviously, unfortunately, near the tail end of the season, right, that last one quarter stretch, Alperen Sengun goes down due to injury, and who else but it gets tapped to join the starting lineup? But Amen Thompson, right, gets inserted into the starting lineup, and across those final, that final quarter of the season, 17 games where he was in that starting lineup, He wound up averaging just under 14 points a game, 9.2 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 1.4 steals per contest. Really impressive stat line for a rookie. I mean, it's almost like you could separate Amen Thompson's season into like 3 specific chunks, right? There was like that first itty bitty chunk where they were content. They were going to we were going to go, deal with the lumps, deal with the bruises of him being the primary ball handler. And then that like got 86 super quick because of the injury. Then he comes back. He's the off the bench Swiss Army knife, all that. And he really kind of excels in that role. And then there's the quarter stretch of the season where he becomes a starter and you're like, wow, this is a real glimpse at what he can be.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a testament to his IQ and his IQ of allowing him to kind of weaponize his athleticism, because that's what was on display. His IQ allowed him to weaponize his athleticism to be a top-tier perimeter defender in this league, understanding on the fly how to guard without fouling, how to be disruptive, how to really stand guys up and use his athleticism and strength and size to really disrupt top-tier offensive players. But not just that, understanding that, hey, you may not be the best shooter in the world, but there's other ways that you can affect the game offensively with your athleticism. Number one, his motor. Always on the offensive boards, getting, second chance points. But of course, the biggest thing is his backside cutting. His backside cutting as a lob threat, as a dunker spot finisher. Yeah, lob threat. He was one of those, and dunker spot finisher, most importantly, and really just help not be a non-factor, because his defense was so impactful, right? We didn't want him to be a non-factor on offense, and his ability to cut on those backsides. I have to give a testament to his IQ and play style, as well as Ime Udoka, really identifying that and helping grow with him. And then once he became a starter, we also started to use him in the pick and roll with his size, right? In the inverse way that none of us really thought we could use him in. And he excelled at that as well. So it's just all these different ways where when you're a real NBA player, when you know ball, you find ways to affect the game in a positive way. And I think that was Amen's biggest strength and the most encouraging thing to see from a young player, a rookie.
Oftentimes when you have a guy like that who's kind of a shooting liability offensively, you do see them sometimes be a non-factor or even at times a detriment offensively to their team. And the fact that he was an offensive plus, despite the fact that he can't shoot the ball yet, was entirely impressive. You go look at the lineup data from when he did, play alongside the Rocket starters, so Van Vliet, Brooks, Jalen Green, and Jabari Smith Jr., that 5-man lineup where he was inserted as a starter. And that lineup wound up having a positive net rating, a 4.8 net rating across 183 minutes played together. Not just, it's not separated by just the stretch to close out the season, but those 5 guys, when they were on the floor, they had a really solid net rating together. That lineup really unlocked something, the 5-out spacing, all that. And again, credits Ime Udoka for kind of recognizing that and playing to some of Amen Thompson's strengths. But that's something else that we want to explore more of. We want to get into some of the other strengths, some of the things that we learned about Amen Thompson's game throughout his rookie season, as well as some of the weaknesses, some of the things that he needs to work on. What are the next steps for Amen Thompson? What does he need to show us next? We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Look, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, so we talked about this a little bit in segment 1, some of the things that stood out about Amen Thompson's rookie season. Now we're going to get a little bit more niche with it and focus in on some specifics about his game, some of the strengths, some of the weaknesses that were on display. And Madison, I'm going to let you steer the bus here a little bit. You want to start with strengths first, or you want to start with the weaknesses that stood out first?
Well, I think we were already kind of talking about some of the strengths, so I think we should just, tie that up in the with a nice, neat bow. And so, of course, the biggest strength, which we kind of alluded to in the first segment, was his athleticism and defense, right? And so, I think Amen is already a all defensive tier player, type of player. And I think that not only comes with his incredible athleticism, his incredible quick twitch agility, ability to stay in front of players, his knack for getting a hand on the ball and being disruptive. I think all those things are like great strengths for him. But one of the things that I think really made his defense to stand out is his toughness and grit. I think there's like some real dog toughness, some real some real attitude with the way he plays defense, with how much attention to detail he plays with his defense. And also the best defenders this league has ever seen are incredibly high IQ players. They understand what the team is doing before the offense is doing before the play even starts. And so they are extremely disruptive in those plays. And for example, Draymond Green. Remember how Draymond Green could be completely disruptive playing cat and mouse between James Harden and the lob threat of Clint Capella, right? That, like, he was one of the only players who could really just figure that out and kind of psych James out. And that's just because his IQ was at such a high level combined with his gifts as a defender. And that is the type of upside I see from Amen's defense. And so that's why I think we should start there. Amen just really has one of the highest ceilings I've ever seen as a defender.
Absolutely. And it kind of feels like he's only just scratching the surface too, because you start talking about some of when you see the best defenders, right? Using the Draymond example, but there's countless others you can go to, but we'll stick with that one as the example, right? The best defenders they're reading the plays before they happen, right? They're understanding, okay, well, if I go here, if this guy is trying to do this, if I move to this spot, whatever, I can break up this play, I can be in this passing lane, I can disrupt a play, in a certain way. Even, to go a different direction with it, I'll highlight all the way back to the 2020 bubble playoffs between the Rockets and Lakers. Remember when LeBron was just blowing up every single one of the Rockets' offensive sets because he was getting to play free safety defensively because the Rockets had a non-shooter in Russell Westbrook. And so LeBron was just reading every single Rockets play and understanding, okay, I'm just going to roam and I'm going to blow everything up. So when you have high IQ players like that, it does translate defensively, but I think the flip side is when you're able to process like that, when you have a high IQ guy like that, it also helps offensively, right? We've seen guys who have that high IQ on offense and it helps them on defense. I think the reverse can also be said. When you understand defensively where to be, how to move, all that kind of stuff, it does help you at times offensively. And one of the things that we didn't see as much as I would have thought we would have seen throughout his rookie season, but we still saw flashes of it, was when he started to really understand just how physically dominant he is compared to his peers, compared to the guys that were guarding him. When he got downhill with a full head of steam and was able to then just elevate and like bump a defender off and finish through contact at the rim, it was impressive. And it was almost like he was just learning how to walk for the first time. Where like you're just like, or like when Superman first gets his powers and you're like, he's like testing his limits and he's trying to figure out, okay, how hard can I go? And it's one of those things where, one of my hopes for this next season, one of my, like, if I'm constructing like a Rockets wish list for this next season, is I just want to see some reps where the Rockets put the ball in a men's hands, give him 5-out spacing, and just let him go to work, right? Yeah. We've seen it time and time again with guys like Russell Westbrook, guys like Ben Simmons, guys that are, these really dominant physical guys who have the passing chops, who have the physical, the athleticism, whatever, to then dominate and just get downhill. And you're either going to, if you play them in single coverage, if you don't send help, then they're going to finish at the rim or draw a foul. If you do send help, then they're going to be able to kick it out to a wide open shooter. It's such simple offense, but it works. Because when you have a guy like Amen Thompson, sometimes the simplest offense is the best offense.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. I mean, we definitely need to see more of Amen slashing in the half court, right? We saw, I think we saw a good decent amount out in transition, and I think that's where we really got to see that type of stuff pop. But it's just not enough of that in the half court, and I think that kind of leads us into one of his biggest weaknesses. It's not the biggest one, but it is a very big weakness and the one that really surprised a lot of Rockets fans. But it's the ball, it's the handle. The handle is like we said, the Rockets tried to allow him to initiate early in the season, but it was very clear that he could not initiate because his handle was not up to par. He could not run an NBA offense just because it wasn't there for him. He needs to work on his handle if he's going to be a point guard. But even just to make the moves that you're saying, I felt that Amen was an incredible finisher out of the dunker spot off 2 feet as a finisher. But I thought a lot of his finishing kind of fell off when he had to dribble, and get off 1 foot. There was a lot of picking the ball up too early, awkward, too Euro step.
Settling for like a floater, like just a little bit outside. Yeah. Like, and when you're that big and that strong, you shouldn't be settling for shots further away from the rim.
It felt like Jabari Smith in his first year, where Jabari Smith would pick up his dribble too early and he'd take some awkward steps and he end up being too far away from the rim, or just he's not able to properly use his momentum to score at the basket. And you see a lot. I felt like I saw a lot of that from Amen last year when he was in the half court trying to create for himself. And it's honestly due to the handle. We've seen a lot of deflections. And this is a guy who we all know is an incredible passer. Incredible elite passer, right? But he's not able to leverage how incredible that skill is because he's not able to keep his dribble alive. He's not able to extend possessions with his handle. And so a lot of the times that we see him picking the ball up, making a jump pass, and it's, maybe he gets a couple assists because he can make incredible passes, but he won't get that consistent leverage. He won't reach his maximum outcomes with that, without the handle, without getting all the way to the basket in the right manner. And to me, a lot of people will say shooting will be his biggest weakness, right? But right now for me, it's the handle, because it must get better for him to really expand his skill sets and really access all of his tools.
I think if I were to weigh the argument of the handle versus the shooting, I think I'm actually inclined to agree with you that I think if you were to just bump the sliders up on Amen, right? And if you were to give him an elite handle right now, he's immediately an all-NBA caliber player, even without the shooting, because you give him that elite handle, it unlocks so much more for the rest of his game. And we've seen non-shooting presences with a lot of similar skill sets to Amen. I'm going to point to Ben Simmons, right, as the most obvious one.
Exactly.
That's an all-NBA caliber player right there if you have the handle. Now, the shooting would be great, a great addition as well, but I'm right there with you, man. The handle is the biggest thing that I'm hoping he spent a lot of time working on this offseason. And if he can come in with an even, a marginally improved handle this next year, it's going to unlock a lot more possibilities for him. I think it's going to be easier for Ime Udoka and the coaching staff to play him as a primary ball handler if that handle has been improved, especially with the added pieces that this Rockets roster has, being able to have another guy like Reed Shepherd, who's a great complement, a guy who can play off ball to him in the backcourt. Still plenty of pieces on the roster to have that 5-out spacing around him. That ultimately, I'm right there with you. The handle is going to do more for him right now than adding the shot will. The shot still needs to come further down the line, and that's absolutely one of the other kind of glaring weaknesses in his game. But that's something that I think is not an immediate glaring detriment or limiting him right now.
So, yes, we want to talk about the shooting as well. I think we all can agree that the shooting has to improve. We hope that he can be a spot-up shooter, right? But I did want to ask you one question. It's something that I noticed when I watched the film a lot about him, and I think it may be related to his handle as well, the issues he has with his handles. Do you think he has like a bit of butterfingers? Like I often find him bobbling the ball or just losing it without even having the contact or a player knock it out of his hands. I often see him sometimes drop a entry pass, or bobble it twice before he picks it up and dunks it real quick, right? I just noticed that a lot. I don't know if he has maybe he got some butterfingers going on, and that may be also contributing to the handle issue.
Now that you mention it, and now that I'm thinking back on it, you're right. There is something there, and maybe it is. Maybe it could be chalked up to a little bit of, I don't want to say nerves or something, but maybe it is just a little getting a little too excited, thinking, okay, what am I about to do with the ball? And I think now that you've mentioned it, right, I think it was more prone to happen when he had a live dribble, right? Like, there were times where he's in the dunker spot and he's getting ready to, make his move around the basket off 2 feet, whatever. But I think it happened a lot too when he was trying to, navigate in traffic or dribble into, dribbling into the lane, whatever. And he's trying to decide what move he's going to make next. Yeah. And I think sometimes it was the indecisiveness, right? Okay, am I going to pass? Am I looking to score? What am I doing here? Am I getting all the way to the cup? Do I have a counter for this defender who's in front of me? Like, what's my next move going to be? And I think some of that is hopefully going to get cleaned up over time with him just becoming more decisive in what he wants to do, right? So it's understanding, okay, if I get here, then I know where my pass is going to be. Or if I get here, then I know that I'm going to my floater immediately. Or if the defender stops me before I get all the way to the rim. Or if I am all the way at the rim, then I'm just elevating and going through the contact. So I do agree with you. I think there's something there, but I don't think it's anything that's like in crazy, like worrying, like when we watched like Usman Garuba, who had like stone hands. Like the dude couldn't catch passes to save his life.
No, it's not that bad at all.
It's different than that, but there is a little bit of something there, and it's definitely something that he probably needs to, work on a little bit. But I think it's more of a processing thing than it is anything about like him just not having good hands, especially because I've seen his hands up close. I've seen his hands. He's got big hands, and big hands is one of the things. I mean, we talk about it all the time with guys like Kawhi, MJ, whatever. Big hands help you control the ball a lot better, right? Especially when you're trying to finish in and around the rim, when you're dribbling, all that stuff. So the big hands should be a benefit to him and should be something that helps him as his career progresses. But what we want to talk about coming up next is, what does Amen Thompson need to show us this next season? What does he need to improve upon? What do we want to see out of him in his sophomore campaign? We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball, talking all things Amen Thompson right now. And Madison, I think that when we look ahead now to this next Rocket season, this next campaign, there's a lot. It's tough because the Rockets have so many young guys on their roster. And you look up and down this roster and you think, man, where are they going to get the minutes for some of these guys, right? Like, you look realistically, and we haven't done this yet. We're going to do it in a future episode where we sit down and try and, tackle different lineups, different expectations, rotations, minutes, all that stuff. But realistically, when you look at, who the Rockets starting five projects to be with Van Vliet, Jalen, Dillon, Jabari, and Sengun. So the same starting five as last season. And then you look at the bench unit that they're projecting to have with Reed Shepherd, Cam Whitmore, Amen Thompson, Tari, Eason, and Steven Adams. You really start looking, you're like, man, like Amen's only gonna be able to walk home with, maybe 20-ish minutes a night if we're lucky. And it's kind of painful because you see how productive he was in his minutes this past season. So it's tough to try and envision like what his role is going to be this next year. Is he going to be more so still in that pseudo wing role, or are they going to give him opportunities to be that primary ball handler? That's kind of the biggest question, I think, as we go into this next season for Amen, is what is that role ultimately going to look like for him?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think, of course, he's going to play a little bit similar as a Swiss Army knife. As a Swiss Army knife coming off the bench. Similar to what he was playing before Sengun went out. And I do think he can get uptick in his minutes in Dillon Brooks' spot. I think Dillon Brooks' spot, or if Jabari Smith doesn't really come out and improve in his skill sets, that we like to see the improvement, I think there's an opportunity for him to steal minutes there in both the 3 and 4 spot. I do think his role, but as a role for specifically, I think he'll be off the bench stopper, a guy who is going to be electric, getting up and down, getting us in and out of our offense. And I really am excited to see him play with Reed Shepherd. I think that off the bench gives him the opportunity, if he adds to his handle, he can start to initiate some offense off the bench and let Reed go on and off ball and really help him with initiating the offense, because it's going to be a lot for Reed to just be the full-time backup point guard. It'll be really nice if he has a secondary initiator in those minutes. And so I really like his role as a secondary initiator and a defensive disruptor, and a guy who's going to help the Rockets get up and down, increase their pace, and really score in transition.
Here's my hot take. I think he's going to be a closer for the Rockets next season.
Oh, I think he'll close a lot of games. I think when people are slacking, and come on, Ime Udoka is a defense first guy, and this guy's our best defender, right? And so if he is able to continue to be effective offensively and not to be a zero offensively, I'm pretty sure that Amen will probably be closing a lot of games. And let's say he improves to like a 32% three-point shooter. I think if he gets to that level, he'll start to threaten Dillon Brooks for that starting spot, for sure.
That would be. I don't want to say pipe dream Madison, but he shot under 14% from three his rookie season. I'd be happy if he just got up to 25% this next year. Like being 110% honest. Like that already is a monumental leap, going from 14%, and I'm rounding up to, it was actually 13.8%. Like that. You know what? Let's have a little fun here. What do you think he shoots from three this next season? What's your official prediction right now?
22%.
22%? All right.
I think 22%. I think he can get to 22% next year.
I'm going to be slightly more optimistic. I'm going to say 24.5%.
Okay, that would be really good. That's a big improvement. 10%. A 10% improvement is a big improvement, even though it's not as much as we would like. We'd like to see him at least, improve. It's not to be honest, it's not going to be hard to get to 24%. But I mean,
some of it is just there were some threes that I think he was taking this past year that he was taking within the flow of the offense, and I think he got to a point where he realized that just wasn't his forte, and I think he started to wean down on some of those threes as the season progressed. And then once he was like officially in the dunker spot for like those final 17 games. In fact, how many threes did he attempt across those final 17 games? It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He attempted 7 threes over those final 17 games where he was a starter. So whereas the first however many games that he had where he wasn't a starter, he attempted, I'm not even going to crunch it. It was a lot more than that for sure. I am curious. So you mentioned there a minute ago that Amen has a realistic chance and to contend for that starting spot from Dillon Brooks. How strongly do you feel about that?
I feel pretty strongly. I feel like Dillon Brooks took a step back defensively last year. Mm-hmm. I think he shot better than he typically does, right? And so I don't know if that will continue for Dillon Brooks. And I think if he doesn't pick his defense back up, then Amen has a real opportunity to overtake him in that spot. And the reason he can do it is also, let's say Jalen comes in shooting 36, 37%, like on good volume. Then and let's say maybe Sengun is shooting about 34%, right? And then so the spacing need is not as evident because other guys are now shooting it a bit better. And now you can just lean onto his defense and use him as this dunker spot cutter because he'll be the only non-shooter on the floor, right? And so now you have the wherewithal from the improvement of the other young guys that can really help him. And also, let's say Jabari Smith isn't developed in the way that we want. But the other guys are still shooting well. There's also opportunity for him to start at the 4 if Jabari just, something crazy happens and he's just not improving.
I like the take. I think Tari has a better argument or a stronger argument to enter the starting lineup over a Dillon Brooks at this point, at least.
I love Tari Eason. I think he's an excellent defender, but I think Amen is just a tier above. But Tari can shoot. So, you know what I mean? Tari can shoot.
They're also different types of defenders, right? Like they defend in different ways. And I think Tari is more Tari is still a wing, but he's a bigger, stronger wing, and Amen is more your point of attack defender. Tari, I think, is a better disruptor on defense right now than Amen. Amen is a better man-to-man, point of attack, gonna completely shut you down and put the clamps on you one-on-one.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing, and I value the way that Amen plays defense right now just a bit more. I think you need a defensive stopper in this league with all these with the superstars you have to go up against, and you need a guy who can, point of attack, one-on-one, walk you down. I think Tari's more of a free safety You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You let him go out there and make plays, right? But I think he still has a lot to learn as a one-on-one defender. But he's going into his third year. He made it, that stuff is well within his ways to be an elite one-on-one defender. So he might pick it up, and if he picks it up, then he has the shooting to space the floor as well. So I think Dillon Brooks' minutes are definitely in jeopardy with those two guys breathing down his back.
We want to hear your thoughts on Amen Thompson, how he played in his rookie season. What are your expectations for him in his sophomore campaign? Could he be a Rockets starter before season's end this next year? Let us know your thoughts in those YouTube comments. Madison, you know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down at.
Find me on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Come talk Rockets basketball and NBA draft.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, a 5-star review helps us out a ton. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.